Hey everyone, how is it going? I know last night I came on here and was talking a lot about just a topic that was on my heart and about what's going to be in the next Glory Bound boxes. So if you missed that live, I know it didn't notify a lot of you when I came live before, but it is there. It's pinned at the top. There's a lot of good information, so if you have time, go back, listen to that. But today, I am going to be talking about week 3 of the Daughters of Grace study. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it is a 6-week study. It is in the Glory Bound boxes from the spring, so if you purchase that, you have this already. If not, you can buy the study from Daily Grace Company themselves. And we are on week 3 right now. I don't know about you, but I am learning so much about the women in the Bible. Like, I didn't know it was going to go so in depth as to what their situations were, what their background was. And something that I find really interesting when I'm reading about these women is they're all in different cultures. They're all in different times. The different backgrounds and predicaments that they're in are so different based on what time period they're in, right? So I found that to be super interesting, especially when we get to Esther's story, because it was a total switch of pace of the culture that we had been seeing previously. So the woman that they start out with, hey Jenna, I see you're here. I see you're here. The person they start off with is Jael, and she is in Judges 4-5. And she, you guys, she did something that took so much courage and bravery. She literally struck a guy that was a bad guy that people were after in the head and killed him because she knew that that's what she was supposed to do in her heart, which sounds crazy, but truly she used what she had to do what she knew she needed to do. And her story is really unique because it wasn't a huge, long reading, but she served such a great purpose. And I think that circles back to every single one of these women that we're reading about, that they all have a specific purpose. And then you look at, the legacy that they leave, and you look at the lineage that they're a part of, and you're like, whoa, if she wouldn't have done this, she wouldn't have had this child. If she wouldn't have, gone to God with this person wouldn't have given birth to him, who went on to be the grandparent of Jesus, right? So they all have this extremely important role in what we experience today. And this guy that she killed, which I couldn't imagine being in that situation, to have the courage and the strength to actually do that. I'm sure you get in fight or flight mode, right? I'm sure she wasn't sitting there weighing all the pros and cons and thinking about everything, but she chose to do it, and she chose to do what she knew she had to do. And he was a really bad guy, right? And he died at the hand of a woman, which if you know his background, which I'm not going to get into because that's a long, long story, there's a lot of irony there. And I love how they said that she did what she could with what she had, and her life reminds us to do the same, because it's easy to feel like we do not have all that we need to serve the Lord. I know that some people are like, well, I can't buy the Bible studies to study God's word, or, I can't, donate a ton of stuff to people who are in need, or donate a ton of money, but that's not what serving the Lord always looks like. Serving the Lord is doing what you can with the resources that you have, whether that's a ton, whether you think that's not a lot, you can still do so much with what you do have. And for me, I feel like I'm pretty housebound, right? I work from home. My husband works second shift, so the evenings I'm home with my toddlers, so I don't get a lot of opportunity to see women in person, to do in-person things. But I use the resource that I have, and that is this community. So whatever you have in your life that you can leverage to glorify God, to serve God, she reminded me to focus on that and to not treat it lightly, right? It's a privilege to be able to do this, and there's opportunities everywhere. Clearly, she made the most of what she had. And yet God will use us right where we are with the gifts and talents he has given us, because it is where he placed us and has called us to be. He only asks that we be surrendered to him, and he is pleased with when we serve him right where we are, which I love that, because I feel like too in motherhood, it can feel like, well, if I didn't have to do all these, thousands of other things on my plate, I would have more time. But God understands everything that we have on our plate. God understands all of the things we do day to day, when we serve our families, when we go to an important job, all of these things he sees. And he loves it when we serve him through those things, right? And I think I was listening to a podcast, but they were talking about how when we're doing our mundane motherly things, God is with us. And when we are serving our family, whether we're doing the dishes, whether putting away laundry, whatever those tasks are, God sees that, and we can still do it in a serving way to him, right? So I loved her story. And when they said, like, what do we learn about God's character in her life, I said God values our devotion to him and doing what is right. And sometimes doing what is right is literally scary. And the character qualities I noticed in her is just her courage. She's a very quick thinker. She is resourceful, and I admired that a lot about her. So what did I learn from her story is to use what I have for his glory and not to be afraid, because God will carry me and give me strength to conquer my trials. So I hope that you guys enjoyed her story. I'm going to move on to Ruth. She has her own book in the Bible, and they centered it on Ruth 1-4. And she was so loyal to her mother-in-law, right? Because she lost her husband, and her sister-in-law also lost her husband. So this woman, and it was Naomi, she lost her 2 sons, and she's left with her 2 daughter-in-laws. And she was like, leave and go back to the country that you guys, or land that you guys came from. Like, go back to your households. And Ruth was like, I'm not leaving you. I'm loyal to you. You've been loyal to me. I'm not going to leave you. And that turned into this really beautiful story where she had to go to a whole new land. She didn't have a husband. She was widowed, and God still used her in a beautiful way. So I pulled up from Ruth. Where did I want to read from? Chapter 2. And then I'm starting at verse 10. And she was trying to find a husband, right? She was trying to find a man that she could serve and live with. And she did find one guy, and she said, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner, right? Like, she wasn't from that land. I feel like they had a lot of differences in just the ways that they systematically did things, right? And all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, whose wings you have come to take refuge. Like, so powerful. God never left her side as she was going through all of this craziness. And they spoke blessings over her. And at the end, I really loved how in chapter 4, verse 11, they said, we are witness, may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah. Brought up the other 2 girls we were just chatting about before, who together built up the house of Israel. May you act worthy in, I'm not going to try to say that town, and be renowned in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring that the Lord will give you by this young woman. So she had this vital piece in the lineage of Jesus, which is truly amazing. And she was able to find the right person to create that person with. And something that I like that they pointed out in this study is that we see God use ordinary people to fulfill his perfect will. Ruth was a Moabite, a foreign woman who, despite her lineage, put her trust in God of Israel. And the man that she ended up marrying, Boaz, was the direct descendant of another woman we have learned of, Rahab. And the son of the woman who had lived a sinful life had been redeemed from it. And Boaz reminds us all that what God did for Rahab and her line. So a lot of this, I got toddlers, y'all. I got toddlers with me. a lot of this circles back to the part that they play in God's divine plan, right? Do I have a peanut butter monster? Please don't touch. Please don't touch. Can you go get a wipe? I do not have childcare. I know, but you're covered in peanut butter, so you haven't used it yet. Can you go use your wipe? Why would you? I don't have childcare this week, and next week, because my daycare provider, she is down in Disney with her kiddos, which is super fun. But that leaves me with the crazies, covered in peanut butter. They were eating bagels. Can you say hi? Oh, are you okay? You trying to get your foot in?
Yeah.
Can you say hi?
No.
Oh, okay.
I covered in peanut butter, drive me.
You're covered in peanut butter? So what did we learn about God? What did you learn? Yeah, that God will qualify anyone. And when we trust him, beautiful things can happen because
Jesus will go on that side.
Oh, Jesus is on that side?
Yeah.
That's really important to know, isn't it?
Oh,
So
go
some
on that
character
side.
qualities we noticed in her is that she's really loyal. And not just to God, but to her mother-in-law, right? To Naomi. She knew what God was going to promise her, and she just leaned into the people she was devoted to, including God. And thank you. And what I can learn from her story and apply to my life is to be loyal to God, which sounds so simple, but day to day, you guys, like we mess up all the time, and God never leaves our side. He's always loyal to us.
Take it off.
Shh, I'm not going to take this off because I don't need to use it right now.
Yeah.
And the people in your life and who have made you who you are, like they deserve loyalty too. So I think it's important for us to check our character. I know, we'll go get a wipe. I tried to tell you you were a mess.
No.
Okay. And I think it's important for us to show the people in our life that, bring us back to God and act as mentors, how much they mean to us, and to love them unconditionally as well, which is something I think Ruth did beautifully in her life. And then we talk about Hannah. And Hannah. I think the biggest thing I got from her is to remain focused on the Lord, right? And she's the mother of Samuel. And like a few other women we've read about, she struggled to conceive. Hey. And for some reason, this seems to be a common ground that these women are having. And they understand the value. And back then, I feel like there was a lot of pressure, like societal pressure, cultural pressure. Like we're in much different days now compared to where they were. And she struggled to conceive. And that's hard for any woman, any mother. Don't put that in your mouth though, okay? And so I'm going to read a little bit. Okay, go get some paper. You have paper. Go get it. Go get it. Go get the paper. Go get your paper. Literally set her up with markers and coloring stuff before I came in here. But we are introduced to Hannah at a time in the history of Israel when the nation was not focused on the Lord, and yet she was. And how fitting is that? I feel like our society today, the time in history that we are in, so many people are not focused on the Lord. In fact, we are told to kind of hide that piece of us and be careful and treat that as like and treat that more as like a taboo topic, if you will. And she can relate to that, right? Like she was not in a time where that was the popular thing to believe in. You want 4-6? Here's more. Go color that, okay? And I love that when it said,
pink, a red, and yellow.
You have them. Please go that way. I am working. Go. Oh man, my patience today. So instead of living with the bitterness that she had, that a lot of people could easily just turn to, she took her sorrow to the Lord and she poured out her heart to the Lord and promised him. Yep, go color out here. Yep, in a minute. I am busy. No. You know when they are just doing it to get your attention and you need to draw a line? Anyways, I'm going to finish this because they are perfectly fine. When it seemed that she had nowhere else to turn, she just continually kept going to the Lord with the desires of her heart. And I think it's so important for us to remember when we are going through these trials, when we are confused as to why something's not flourishing. I know personally, like I talk about this a lot, our house situation and the battle that has been. I'm still not turning on the Lord or being bitter. I know that he has a plan. I just need to keep praying. And I do. I pray all the time that he helps me stay on the path that he wants me on. And I say all the time, for his will to be done. I, of course, am impatient and would love to be in a home sooner than later and would love to build tomorrow instead of in 3 years from now, if that's what we can afford to do. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be turning to him and asking for his will to be done, because we could easily go, buy something that might not be what God has planned for us, but I want to be patient enough for exactly what he has in his divine plan, because I trust him so much more than I trust myself. And the thing that I think I struggle with the most is trusting that I'm reading his plan when he's speaking it to me, right? Or trusting my decisions when I'm making them. I'm like, okay, is this what God wants me to do? It seems like a really great option, but is it the one that God wants me to take? And Hannah had brought her burden to the Lord one day and poured out every part of her heart, and she had left the burden at his feet. And when she did this, people literally thought she was drunk because of the way she was worshiping and praying to God. Because she had her eyes closed, she was just moving her lips, and people were literally like, oh, look at her, drunk. And she was like just pouring herself out to God. And God did hear the prayer of Hannah, and they talk about that, and that God remembered her. And she let out this beautiful prayer. I think I noted some of this. So part of the prayer that she had said to the Lord is, there is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth, for the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions were weighed. So I loved, and she goes on, and the prayer is beautiful. It's in 1 Samuel chapter 2, and this also covers chapter 1. And this prayer just really praises God for who he is. And it shows us the depth of Hannah's knowledge of the Lord and reminds us of the magnificent that Mary, the mother of Jesus, would someday write about her own son, which is another amazing prayer I'm sure we're going to dive into in this. So I loved a lot about her story too. And what we learned about, oh my gosh, those kids, what we learned about God and his character is that he hears us and he remembers us. I wish my kids would understand that I hear them and I remember them right now. Hey, why are we throwing down? I know you want more. I'm going to get it in a minute. You're just fine right now. Those of you with toddlers, bless. How is your day going? I would love for you guys to be, stop please. Love for you guys to be chatting in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. You need to stop crying. Yeah, you ripped it. That one's been very emotional. She did not sleep well last night. Do you want to come sit on my lap? You just wait a minute, please. You can sit where you are. Oh, and it's warm in our apartment. I don't know if any of you guys have your air conditioning already turned on. Yeah, I don't know if you guys already have your air conditioning turned on or anything like that, but I have ours blasting because I hate humidity. Like, that's the one thing I cannot stomach. Here, you sit up there. No colors up there, but you can play with Dad up there, okay? Go on. Well, then change it. You know how to work it. And if you're going to sit in here and cry, I'm going to put you in Easton's room because there's no reason to do that.
No.
So what character qualities, positive or negative, do we see demonstrated in Hannah's life? And something that I noted, okay. Come on, you're going to go in Easton's room. I don't want to hear you complain. I loved how passionate she was and how willing she was to pray in front of others. Like, she did not care what other people thought of her and how she was praying. She cared about being open and honest with God. She cared about that. Here, in here, please. In here, please. And I can totally relate to that. Like right now, I don't really care about the mess you guys are seeing. And why is that? Because I'm here to talk about these women and talk about God with you guys. And I'm going to do that, whether these guys are throwing down and making it hard or not. No, I want you to sit in here because you're not being very nice. Because all you're doing is crying. And I don't like when you act like that. Bless. Bless. Yep, in a minute, please. You need to wait. Whew. When are you coming back, Amanda? No, just kidding. Enjoy Disney. Need this time too. So the last thing I wanted to say about Hannah is that she is just a woman of her word, and that reminded me a lot of God, like of who God is. And she had a lot of God in her, and I think she was able to truly reflect that to the people in her life, which I thought that was super, super cool. So I'm going to take a drink of water quick. Then we don't even know her name. Day 4. We have the widow of Zarephath. Zarephath? One of the two. But we don't even get to know her name in this. And she just has a little bit of a spot in this story, but it's still super impactful because of what she was able to overcome and choose to do by trusting in God. And it was not lighthearted, the decision that she had to make. So in 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 8 through 24, we meet the widow. And there's a famine in the land that she lives in. And she literally has a little bit of flour, a little bit of oil, and Elijah, is that who came in there? Yeah, so God told Elijah to find her. And he goes and finds her and is like, hey, I need something to eat. I need bread. And she's like, yo, I don't have bread. Like, I have this jar of flour. This is all I have. There's a famine here. And this is probably my son and I's last meal. We're like preparing to die. And he was like, well, you're just going to have to trust me because God's got you. I'm with him. It's all going to be good, right? That's like my version of it. And she literally gave him the last meal that her and her son had, in full faith that God was going to take care of them. And what have I written down here? So God told Elijah to find them and that the widow would feed him. So God was like, she will feed you. And she did. And he told her that God said that the jar of flour would never run out and her jug of oil would never run dry as long as there was famine in the land. She could have said no, but she may have felt like she had nothing to lose. Which, I mean, yeah, if it's your last meal, to give that up in order to have an everlasting flour and oil supply until the famine stopped, I mean, that was a really smart thing of her to do, period. And because she had faith in our good God, she knew that that's what was going to happen. And this was not the last time. So I love that they brought this up. This is not the last time that she would see God work on her part. And when her son did become ill, he died, and the prophet would raise him from the dead. And God was teaching the woman that he would provide for every need she would ever face. And he would do what he said that he would do. And how many times have we thought, okay, there's no way this is going to work out, and then something really great happens? Everything good, you guys, in our lives is because of God. And he sees you. He knows what you're going through. And he's not going to leave you abandoned. He's going to carry you through the trials. And every day when we are reminded again of his fresh mercy and grace for our day, we will also be reminded of his great love for us and that he's always faithful. So I thought this was extremely powerful. I can't imagine being in her shoes and being faced with that decision. But she was so courageous, and she trusted, is what I wrote down about her. She knew God's love for her and her son, which I think it's really important for us to remember too, if you're a mom, that God loves our children more than we do. They are his children. before they were our children, right? So when something scary is happening and our kids are being faced with scary trials, it's so good to know that their God is our God and that we can pray to him for our child together. And I have goosebumps because I love that concept, especially when like something, scary is happening with your kid, whether it's health related, whether it's a move that you're going through, whether it's a social thing. And I mean, gosh, between all of the school things being put virtual and then back in school, the mental health of children, like we can pray to God about those things because that's his child too. And he loves them and is never going to abandon them or us. So something that I learned about God, and this is just that every day we get this. There's not just we used our one-time miracle from God. No, he will continue to provide for us. And something that I learned that I'm going to be applying to my life is that God performed miracles for her, and he will for me. I don't know why it's such a bad thing to wish and hope or believe in miracles, right? Like, it's an amazing thing that God can and will do. And the more faith we have in that, and not just like, oh, I know God can do that, but if you're like, I know my God, I know what he's capable of, and I know he can do this. And one of the things I think about is the hearts of some people that I love. And I know the only way that they can change is through God and through the Holy Spirit. So that's something I pray for all the time because I know that he can handle that. I know he's the one who has the strength to overcome that hard spot in my life. And there's nobody else or nothing else I can turn to that I even have any sort of glimmer of hope in, but I have all the hope in him. So that's a great perspective to have on that kind of stuff because it can be really scary if you feel like there's no hope, especially for like a relationship. Maybe it's with a friend, a spouse, a parent, a family member. Bring that to God. And I know that was kind of off topic there, but he can perform miracles in those people's lives. And praying for mine, praying for all the miracles because I know he can do it. So they leave us off with Esther, and this girl, orphaned to queen. Like, they start out there, and I'm like, all right, you have my attention, because I didn't really know her story before this. Hey, Ashley, what's up? I'm already on day 5, but feel free to comment and ask questions if you have questions from day 1 through 4 of week 3. So she replaced the old queen, and the old queen got banished because she basically didn't want to go to a party. And the king was like, oh, well, I banish you. Like, what? That's crazy. And I was reading this and just the royalty, I loved that piece of it. It was such a different scenery. And for her, that had to be so shocking. I mean, because she was Jewish and she was an orphan, and then all of a sudden, well, it wasn't all of a sudden, it was a process for her, but then she goes to being a queen, and not just like a normal queen, like she had everything you could think of. And the relationship that she had with the king, she wasn't like culturally ever supposed to approach him. He was only supposed to approach her, which I thought that was super interesting, and understanding that piece of it really sets the scene for why it's so powerful what she did. So when he was pulling up new women to pick a new queen, he wanted young, beautiful, virgin women, and they didn't know she was Jewish at the time, so they didn't know her background. And she had to go through months of preparation until her chance with the king came, and the king picked her, loved her more than all the women. And you don't hear the story talk a lot about how like God played a direct factor, but reading back, like you can totally see that God had him pick undoubtedly for a reason. And they say because she has her own book of the Bible too, so it's in Esther chapter 2 verses 17 I'm going to start at. The king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won grace and favor in his sight more than all the other virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her the queen. So now she's queen, right? And then we have her uncle Mordecai, and he had uncovered this plot against the king that somebody was going to kill him, right? So they were like, oh, you're an honorable man, and they really liked him from there on out. But Haman, one of the king's right-hand dudes, if you will, did not like him because he was Jewish and he wouldn't bow down to him. And that caused some issues, and Haman had a lot of hatred in his heart, and he came up with this evil plan to kill Jewish people. And he had proposed, I'm going to read it from here. I'm in chapter 3, halfway through verse 8. So he's talking about Jewish people to the king right here. And he says, their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws, so that is not in the king's profit to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let it be decreed that they are destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who charge of the king's business. So basically, he's like, hey, we should really get rid of these people because they don't have the exact same laws as us, and they don't want to, follow our king, so they should just go. So these letters were sent by carriers all over the king's provinces with instructions to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, and to plunder their goods. You have to be pretty mad, pretty evil, to come up with this plan out of hatred, right? There was nothing really to gain from it other than revenge. Or I don't even know if revenge is the right word because they didn't do anything wrong. It's just purely out of hatred for being different from one another, which is so ugly. And it comes back to bite him, right? I mean, he gets hung. He ends up getting hung because the queen, our girl, finds out about this. And when she finds out about this, it's not like she could just go up to the king and be like, hey, this is his plan. This is what's wrong. They didn't have that kind of open communication, right? So she had to request to speak to the king. And I had written this down as well, or highlighted it. So I'm in chapter 8. Well, that's a little bit in front of it. But she basically was like, I'm going to have a dinner for you guys, and I would like to approach you and have a request. And this was bold of her because the last queen got banished for not coming to a party, right? So the stakes are pretty high. She knew there was a good chance, this could be it for her, that she could die for requesting this. But because she was Jewish, she felt so called to protect her people. And God had already had a covenant with the Jewish people, right? They knew they were going to be protected, but she was able to be a piece of the story. And I don't know what would have happened if she hadn't have done this, but she was able to be a piece of the pie that got them to be protected. And that would not have happened without her divine intervention, without God's divine intervention of having the king pick her as the queen. Talk about rewriting the narrative. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to think about if this person wouldn't have had the courage to do what they did, what would have happened? Who else would he have used, or what bad would have came of it? So it's really interesting to think about. And what else did I write down about this? Haman wanted to destroy all the Jews because they didn't follow the same laws. And she exposed his evil plot, and then he was hung. So justice was served there. And I love that she commanded a holiday for all of this because there was still a lot of bloodshed. There was still a war between a lot of the different provinces and the Jews, but the Jewish people were not saying hey, I'm going to fight you. They basically, they sent out letters and they were like, hey, you can defend yourself. And if anyone comes at you, defend yourself. And they were ready to. And they're like, if you want to fight us, we will fight back. But I don't think they were the ones going out and picking the fights. But they were prepared to protect themselves. And they did. And there was a lot of bloodshed. They they say right here, their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them and laid no hands on the plunder. So people who were not opposed to them, they weren't just going out and killing people, right? They weren't looking for that kind of fight. They were looking to stand up for themselves. And those days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation in every clan, province, and city, that the days of Purim should never fall. And that's what they called like the days after the battle, when they were resting and when they were feasting and celebrating. So they created a holiday from it. And because of Esther, she commanded and confirmed that this was going to be a holiday, and that this is something the kingdom was then going to celebrate. So she protected her people. And she did this by ending up in the place that she did, right? I'm sure it was never her plan to be an orphan, to lose her parents. It was never her plan to be picked by a king to become a queen and be in that palace and rule over people. But she was able to do something that she would have never been able to done had she not been put in that position, had she not gone through the trials, had she not had a relationship with God and known what was right in her heart and have the strength to do it, right? To not fear what could have happened, but to be motivated by what can happen, by what she was able to do. And I think that's something that we can all take away from this, right? Like, having the strength to do what we know is morally right, and knowing what the reward will come from doing that and being that, is so much more powerful than being worried about like what people are going to think, or what we might lose. Sometimes we worry about that, right? And she was just a great example of, you are exactly where you're supposed to be, and God is working through you every single day. And they wrote this, and I really loved the way that they said this. It's on the back side. It says, we have the privilege of being used by him in his divine plan. We can be used by the Lord, or we can let him pass us by and use someone else. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be passed by. I don't want him to use somebody else instead of me. And it takes gumption. That is a great word to use for this, because the bravery she had was unmatched. Totally unmatched. I don't know, the girl, what was that, Jael? I mean, she was brave with the 1-2 bad guy thing. Like, that's crazy town too. But they go on to say, but at the end of our lives, let's look back and be able to say that we were willingly servants that he used freely. And I am very grateful that I have the opportunity to speak to you guys about this stuff, because it's so important to know that you have a community that's here to support you in your spiritual journey, to help you with your faith and study God's word with you, because we can all be these willing servants, right? And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The way I serve is going to be different than the way you serve, but the way you serve is in a way that I cannot serve. And we all, and I have goosebumps, we all need to come together to understand that it takes all of us. And there's no cap as to how many people God will use. He will use every single 1,400 people in this group to glorify him and for his plan. And his plan might not always be the easy one, but it will always be worth it to be used by the King. So I still have goosebumps right now, you guys. I love the way they left off on this, and I'm really, really excited to start week 4. And then for those of you who don't have this one and you want to get in on the next one, I think I might even have it right here. I have a copy. We have the fruit of the Spirit. This one's coming up next, and it's in the Glory Bound box in the spring one. So if you have that, you already got it. And if you don't, you can buy this from Daily Grace Company. I think it's only $5 right now, too, to be honest. I think they're having their sale. But we are going to be giving one away. Ashley Lesbrance has an extra because she got a box, and then she won a giant giveaway. So she wants to be gifting one of these forward. So we're going to find a fun way for us to be doing that in the group, so that one of you guys can win this one for free, so that we can keep studying together. I have one to give away. I know, girl. I know. It's awesome. I love giveaways. And I plan to give away more of the Next Glory Bomb Box too. I have 5 of them that I'm going to give away because it's so, or 4 or 5 that I'm going to give away because it's just so much more fun to give. So, yes, next week. So keep your eyes peeled for that giveaway. And then Wednesday next week, we go live in a discussion group to discuss just kind of what we've read so far. And then I'll keep going on the Thursdays to review these. And let me know if you're watching this back, drop a hashtag replay, tag other girls in it that you've been reading along with so that they can come here. Please ask questions. Let me know what parts you really liked. This is so much more fun when you guys engage and let me know where you're at, because I have a lot of questions too. So it's really fun to hear your perspective and how you digested the reading material that we just went through. So hope you guys have a great night. I gotta go tend to some toddlers.